How are you this morning? Very good. You can see my slide. So just before we go ahead and start it, just a little heads up that some of the material you will see will be unpleasant. I apologize in advance. This is the nature of the material I work with. So we've heard AI is going to revolutionize this, especially in the African continent. We've heard that it's bringing leapfrogging opportunities. In Kenya, for example, as you can see here, it's described as a silver bullet for economic growth. In Ethiopia, there has been talks around how we can harness AI technology to combat poverty, and everywhere you look in South Africa, you hear so many headlines that AI is needed to really tackle a lot of the historical, political, and societal problems that we are facing. And even Tony Blair has come out last month and said the UK needs to embrace AI, the AI revolution. These are just a sample of what you see around in the news. There is plenty every day. There are headlines, there are claims that AI is required, and AI is what Africa needs to really solve a lot of its complex problems. Also within, there is also a whole genre working on AI for good. You see big corporations such as Microsoft and Google focusing on that, spending quite a substantial amount of resources on that. And the idea behind this is, again, to use AI for societal problems. We have a whole conference dedicated for AI for good that takes place in Geneva. We don't have time to delve into that, but whether it has merits or not remains to be seen. Also so I'm here to tell you a lot of these claims and a lot of these ideas that AI should help us tackle a lot of these deeply rooted societal problems. Unfortunately, as much as we want it to be true, unfortunately, is not grounded, does not really reflect what AI is and what the nature of these problems are. We also see from funding agencies, from foundations, the push for AI. I see this is a dangerous route. Without understanding what actual AI is, and without having a nuanced conversation around what AI can and cannot do, the more these NGOs, funding agencies and foundations and philanthropies push AI, it might become a prerequisite for funding and so on. And this is scary. So we might get to a stage where a certain community may not get funding unless they are embracing AI or so on. So this is really dangerous. This is something we have to have a serious conversation about. So what exactly is artificial intelligence? This abstract thing that we hear about, that we read in the news, that we hear in podcasts, that is everywhere, literally. It's ubiquitous. So we don't have time to get into the technical details, but I'll briefly say that what AI does, or AI is tools that abstract. What we do with AI is build models that somehow capture a reality or the phenomena that we are trying to understand. So using AI models, feeding them thousands and millions, even billions of data points, we build an AI model that hopefully, that can categorize, classify, predict, even generate, because as you all might have heard, generative systems are all the talk over the past 2 years. So what AI does is uncover patterns from massive amounts of data through optimization process. For example, if the most popular the most popular, the most commonly used or the most commonly understood type of AI, for example, is face recognition. Let's say you want to build an AI model that identifies faces. What you will do is, set up your model, gather thousands, even billions, the more data, the better, millions of images of faces. Then you feed your model, you teach your model what a face looks like. And by the time you have declared, the model is ready enough, it should be able to then, tell you, when you give it an image that it hasn't seen before, it should be able to tell you it's a face, it's not a face. So that's the very simplistic general notion of a face recognition model. So AI systems are also fundamentally built on to predict the future. AI does not help you understand. So it can identify patterns from massive amounts of data, but it cannot tell you how it's identifying patterns. So what it does is, based on, again, these massive amounts of historical data, it can tell you what the future will look like. So it's always looking into the future without understanding the past. And as we move into building AI models of social phenomena, this is human interaction, human behavior, and so on, we are assuming complex human behavior can be simplified. By gathering these massive amounts of data, we are freezing these phenomena in time by trying to capture this data, and we are kind of simplifying and reducing these complex phenomena in order for it to be captured by data so that we can build the model. So this is the very high-level notion of AI, and there are so many domains. So when we are building, AI models of, environment, the physical system, or so on, our models tend to be accurate, and they tend to be relatively free from moral issues. For example, companies like DeepMind, Google DeepMind, have excelled in building models of weather forecasting, what's called nowcasting, which is predicting the weather for a very short amount of time for the next 2-3 hours. They have excellent models. Also, when it comes to building models of protein folding or even board game playing, this is one of the excellent areas where AI really has excelled. However, when it comes to AI models that are trying to capture, classify, predict, or generate any phenomena that's to do with social systems, all models, even the most recent state-of-the-art, the latest one from OpenAI, Google, Meta, and so on, they all have problems, they all have failures. The models tend to be extremely inaccurate because these phenomena are impossible to capture in data. They also are plagued with ethical and moral issues. So I'll give you a few examples of past catastrophes that have happened. To be honest, catastrophes are happening every day in the AI world. So the Dutch government, for example, deployed an AI system to catch fraudsters that might be taking advantage of the social welfare system. And eventually the model was audited and it was found that it was extremely inaccurate. It resulted in thousands of people losing benefits, suffering mental health consequences, their children being taken away, and so on. And unfortunately, it has to be retracted. The UK also deployed an AI system, an AI algorithm during COVID to provide A-level grades for students. Instead of the teachers allocating grades, they used AI. And unfortunately, the AI was found to be allocating grades based on area code and other societal factors, rather than the merit of the student. This was then scrapped, and in the US, we've seen several cases of face recognition systems that are used in law enforcement. wrongfully resulting in wrongful arrest of people. And this has, just yesterday, the Robert Williams, the first person who went to jail because of errors in facial recognition. ACLU brought the Detroit police to court, and the case was settled for 300,000 USD. So this is a really good outcome, and it's a good news. It's a very fresh news. So these, the AI, what I'm trying to say is AI failures do misfire, do backfire. Last month, McDonald's partnered with IBM, and they removed their cashiers so that the AI system that they partner with can take orders from customers. Unfortunately, that also backfired because the system was just not getting even simple customer orders right. Yet, we are thinking about, deploying this kind of systems to really fundamental spaces like education and healthcare. And again, this is a couple of months. A school in the US contracted with an AI startup to develop an EdTech, an AI that's supposed to help education. Out of this very small school, it has only 18 billion budget, and out of that, they paid 6 million to this AI startup. And unfortunately, also, they discovered very shortly that the AI was not up to task, and it has to be scrapped, and resulted in plenty of loss of money. So we've seen the technical side of, or the very brief general technical definition of what AI is. We also have to understand, to really have a good understanding of whether AI is, something that will leapfrog the continent, or something that will solve a lot of Africa's problems or not. We have to look beyond the technical understanding, the technical definition of what AI is as well. So we have to look at the social infrastructure. What is the ecology? What is the background? What are the invisible forces and labor that make AI happen, that make sure that AI operates as it's intended? So the first thing I want to point out is, although AI back in the 1950s, 60s, during its conception, has the ambition of, pure academic, almost pure academic vision of building an intelligent system that imitates, human cognition, human understanding, human emotion, that vision has disappeared with the emergence of big companies such as Google and Meta. Now, the AI's vision and objective is inseparable from capitalist motives. So it's all about profit maximizing, cutting costs, cutting corners, and generating as much revenue as possible. This is the case whether we are looking at AI research, AI application, AI regulation, and so on, and I'll briefly go through all of them. So to examine what AI exactly values, what AI is doing, myself and colleagues did some research back in 2022 in the world of AI that feels like very, very ages ago, but it's still relevant. So what we did was we looked at 100 most influential AI academic papers from 2 of the most prestigious conferences. These are not just academic papers, these are papers that define the field, that dictate where AI goes. And in one of the analyses, what we did was to look at affiliations and funding sources of these most influential papers. And we looked at data from 2008, 2009 versus 2018 and 2019. And as you can see here, back in 2008, 2009, only 11% of the most influential papers are either authored by big corporations or were funded by big tech corporations. That means 77% or most of the AI research that is influencing the field came from a much diverse range of researchers, including researchers from the global south. But that radically changed 10 years later when you look at data from 2018 and 2019. The number of influential papers that were either authored by big corporations or funded big tech corporations jumped from 11% to 58%. This comes at a cost. This means a lot of diverse research is kicked out and outsourced, while big tech is holding a firm influence in the field of research. Also, if we look at the financial space itself, if you look at back in 2003, a lot of the richest or most influential corporations used to be, again, much more diverse, including automotive companies, food chains, supermarket chains, and so on. Rewind 20 years later in 2023, you can see that this is dominated almost all by big tech corporations, including Apple, Microsoft, Google, and so on. So the financial world or the entire world really is taken over by AI companies. So AI is really a money-making enterprise that gives very little care about social good, social welfare, or social benefits. Also, if you look at lobbying, the most powerful lobbyists have come to be big tech corporations. They influence regulation. They influence not only research, they also influence AI regulation. If you look at Apple, for example, back in 2015, Apple was not even at the top of top 50 list. It was 53. And now this is data from 2022, Apple has jumped from 53 on the list to being number 2, I think. Yeah. So they have increased their budget from 750,000 euros to 3.5 million. Again, they really are pushing control and domination of the AI world entirely. And if we look at AI models, the social infrastructure of AI models themselves, there is a lot of invisible work that goes into AI that is often excluded, that is often made invisible. One of the primary examples is OpenAI using Kenyan content moderators in a very exploitative way. This is not the only case. So the generative models, for example, some of you might have interacted. As you are typing or as you are putting prompts, in order to make sure that the response that is generated is clean and detoxified, and to make sure it's appropriate, it's following appropriate language, a lot of work goes into that. This is the job of data labelers and content moderators that sift through thousands of undesirable images, problematic content, to make sure that that is excluded from the responses of chatbots such as ChatGPT. And this kind of work is often allocated to the global south at a very, in a very exploitative way. These data workers are paid, again, very little, as I said. So the data itself, so before, my specialty is in data auditing. I work with training data sets, I examine data sets, and so on. And one of the most fundamental elements of AI is data. Data really is the backbone of AI. We've had, theories and conceptions of AI, since decades ago, since, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. But what really made the AI revolution over the past 20 years is the availability, I should say in quotation mark, of large-scale data sets thanks to the internet. People upload their contents, or I can guarantee you almost all your textual exchanges or images of, your children, your dogs, or whatever you have uploaded online is part of a training data somewhere in some database. So the way this data set, even though data is fundamental to AI, the way the data set is sourced itself, and the data set, the content of the data set itself is extremely problematic. Data is sourced without awareness of the data subject itself, without consent. And passing that, the data itself, almost all data, and myself and my colleagues have audited a lot of data sets, including most influential data sets that are used to train, for example, Stable Diffusion. It's one of the popular state-of-the-art models. They always contain problematic content. Here, as you can see, this is a dataset audit, again, we did back in 2021. Again, this feels like ages ago in the world of data. But as you can see here, we looked at a dataset called 80 million tiny images. It was one of the most popular datasets that was used to train computer vision models. It was hosted by MIT, and we found several thousands of images labeled with, I have to sanitize I have blurred the images and I have to sanitize the words here. You know, images of black people labeled with the N word, images of women labeled with the C word, the B word, and so on. As you can see here, this is very typical of training data sets. And thankfully, our research picked up a lot of press, and MIT removed the data sets 2 days after our publication, but that doesn't always happen. And a much more recent data set, this is a Stable Diffusion, this is the Lion data set, the data set that's used to train Stable Diffusion. Because I don't have time, I only just show you a couple of samples. So when we look at data sets, what we often, myself and my colleagues, what we do is look at how various concepts, identities, cultures, and so on are represented in that data set. So for example, as you can see here, in the Lion data set, this is a 4 billion image and text pairs. It's a multimodal data set. You can see that this is the first set of images the data set gives you when you query it with the word African. So you can see that the continent is represented in a very stereotypical manner. You know, the image says itself. Whereas if you compare it with European, that concept is represented as if, you know, it doesn't have ethnicity, culture, or whatever. It's, as you can see, it's relatively objective and neutral with maps and flags and so on. And this does have, as I said, data sets are fundamental. They are the backbone of AI. They determine how good your AI is. They determine how well it performs. They determine how accurate the model is. And models problems with data sets always translate to problems with models. Here is a prompt with emotional author. As you can see, it's all images, compared with intellectual author. So these are the two different images. The model, this is, I used OpenAI's DALL-E for this. And I used Stable Diffusion to generate this image. The first image is using the prompt African people at work. The second one compared with European people at work. Again, the image speaks for itself. I won't get into much of it. This is an investigative journalist. Investigative journalism is doing so much to bring, you know, better awareness of what AI is, the opportunities and its faults. And this is a reporting from NPR last year, where they tried to get one of, again, the most popular open source models called Midjourney. They tried to get the model to generate a black doctor treating white children, and the model just simply refused to do that. And this is the closest it can do. So we've kind of briefly touched up on hallucination yesterday in the morning during the plenary. We might laugh about, you know, hallucinations or these silly images that AI models are generating, but they have dire consequences, because they are not just models that are kept in the lab, that are an intellectual endeavor. These are models that are deployed into the world, that are integrated into the health system, into law enforcement, into education, and so on. So to give you an example, for example, the WHO deployed a chatbot that uses one of ChatGPT variants as a base model to aid, sorry, I'm short-sighted and I can't. Yeah, so they deployed a chatbot to help to locate medical aid near the area. And what they found was that the chatbot was giving responses, was giving addresses that do not exist, that just are not simply there. So this has dire consequences. So hallucinations, the problem of hallucinations when models are deployed into the real world have dire consequences. And one thing we keep forgetting is because there is extreme enthusiasm and so much hype around AI that is far removed from the realities of AI, we forget that these systems are extremely unreliable, even in areas where they are domain experts. For example, summarization is supposed to be one of the great strengths of AI, where you can give it, large amounts of documents, PDFs, books, or whatever, and the idea is it will read the document and it will give you a summary. However, this is a very recent study that did a thorough evaluation of how some of the latest models, including Google's Cloud Opus, GPT-4 Turbo, these are the top of the range at the moment. They evaluated how these state-of-the-art models do summarization of large documents. And as you can see here, I have highlighted it in red. Over 50% of the book summaries were identified as containing factual errors or errors of omission. So even in the area where it's domain experts, AI tends to fail. Another thing, when we are talking about thinking of AI as an ecology and as infrastructure rather than just the technical model itself, is what we have to consider is AI, especially generative systems, take so much energy. It's incredible how this is not in everybody's special regulator's attention. The energy required to train, to fine-tune, and to manage these systems is incredible. So this is a report that came out last week from Goldman Sachs. In the UK, AI is expected to suck up to 500% more energy over the next decade. And they describe it as the kind of electricity growth that hasn't been seen in a generation. In small countries such as Ireland, for example, the energy required for generative systems and to run data centers exceeds the total sum amount of energy that households and similar entities use. Just to put it in context. This is even before we get into the huge gallons of water that is required to cool data centers. They need massive amounts of water constantly pouring over these data centers so that the models can run. So just so we get into, I'm a scientist, so we have to touch a little bit of science. One of the things that AI is praised, or that we hear that AI is revolutionizing, is the way science is done. It's supposed to aid novel creation, and it's supposed to bring scientific explorations to another level. However, even the most seemingly credible sources, the most seemingly credible research coming from big tech corporations tends to overinflate and exaggerate the usefulness of AI when it comes to science. So here is an example. DeepMind, it's one of the best research facilities there is in the AI world. They are the brain of Google. They released a paper claiming that they have, using AI, they have found, sorry, I have to go closer. They have found over they claimed that, this is in organic chemistry, they claimed that they have found over 2.2 million new novel structures using AI systems. And this paper, when it came out, it went viral because it represented the height of AI advancing scientific research. However, researchers, actual domain experts that are, organic chemists, scrutinized the claim bit by bit. This is a research that followed, that just came out a few months ago from UCL researchers. And as you can see here, for the claim, that Grandwise claim, that DeepMind claimed, there is very little evidence. There is actually scant evidence of novelty or any of the claims that DeepMind distributed in the original paper. So what we can take from here is that even in the most controlled scientific experiments, what we hear around AI may not be true. You have to take it with a grain of salt. So moving into overhyped claims, sometimes we even hear praise of AI doing amazing things, for example, in retail. And when people do a little digging, what you find is that it's actually not AI, it's actually people doing the job. For example, Amazon had a walkout, Amazon walkout, it's called. You can go to Amazon stores, you can collect your items, and you can just walk out, and the AI will magically know what you have taken, and it will charge you for whatever items you have taken. But under some investigation, what they found was that it was actually over 1,000 real people in India scanning the items of people that are doing the Amazon walkout. So it's, in conclusion, so we are coming to the last few minutes. So I have talked very broadly in general about AI, even though it has so many subdivisions and so many different domains. But I want to differentiate between just AI in general, such as the face identification system I described earlier, and generative AIs. These are systems that generate text and images and audio and video and so on. So generative systems, although they really have pushed the boundaries of AI over the past 2 years since the release of ChatGPT back in November 2022, there has been some doubts whether generative systems are a net benefit or a net negative for society, for the environment, and so on. And myself and my colleagues, because we work at the critical end of AI, we evaluate models, we audit data sets. We've always seen that it's full of problems. But now, big corporations like Goldman Sachs are doing their own analysis, are saying that generative AI may not be worth it after all, given the environmental destruction it's causing due to the energy it's required, and the fact that it's unreliable, inaccurate, and so on. This report came just a couple of weeks ago, and last week, Forbes also did their own analysis of if using generative AI is actually beneficial in the workplace. So they interviewed 2,050 global C-suite users, and the finding is that 77% of these employees using AI say that it has added more work and extra labor rather than reduce labor. So this is a damning report, and the way I see it, generative AI is not a net benefit and is unsustainable. And as we are talking about, AI opportunities, limitations, problems, and so on, there is also an entire conversation around how to regulate AI. And so we have regulation conversations across the entire African continent, in Europe, the US, Asia, and so on. But one thing I want to point out is, unfortunately, there is so much regulatory capture by big corporations, and a lot of the regulation tends to be captured by irrelevant and sci-fi type of concerns that really don't exist. These are, worries about AI going rogue and leading human extinction and so on. Even though these claims are these claims are made by, popular names such as Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, and Geoffrey Hinton, the father of AI. I'm here to tell you that they have no scientific groundings, and they fit squarely in the realm of sci-fi. But unfortunately, these concerns are really infiltrating and influencing the regulation of AI, derailing important questions around, functional failures, bias, discriminatory outputs, and so on. So if you want to read further, I highly recommend this paper by Timnit Gebru and Emily Torres, where they thoroughly debunk that these existential risks, such as extinction from AI, have absolutely no engineering or scientific groundings or basis. Also, very recent, this came out just last week, a thorough analysis did a very extensive analysis saying that inductively, deductively, or subjectively, the idea of existential risks is just not true. It just doesn't exist. It's misleading. So, just a few more minutes. And so coming back to AI for good, we have to ask, good for who? We've seen, especially across Europe, these systems failing. If we are talking about, gender equality, education, and so on, the problems are political. The problems are deeply rooted. Just bringing AI and thinking, oh, we are doing something about it, does not address the problem. It might give us the illusion that we are doing something about it, especially because AI is involved, because it's a shiny tool. Unfortunately, it does not address the root cause, and it just misleads us into wishful thinking that we might be doing something. And finally, a genuine social transformation requires not just to use AI. It has to be theory-driven. It has to address the root causes and these various problems that I point out here. So, with all this, I'm not saying that all AI is bad. I'm not saying we should abandon all AI. Absolutely not. There is room for AI. Actually, a very deliberate AI, deliberately developed AI and deployed AI can bring so much good, but there has to be conditions. For example, if we are talking about, solving gender inequality, it has to be, or any of, the various social problems. The AI has to be built, controlled, owned by indigenous people to serve the needs of those people in a manner that is informed and grounded by these epistemologies and experiences. And this is not just an ideal thing. It does exist. For example, in Mali, Bamako, we have our own small community that is doing AI in a way that's grounded in that small community. In New Zealand, the Maori community have developed magnificent language technologies, machine translation, and so on, but they are doing it in a very specific way, in a very objective way. So that means all these, general purpose AI that is generative systems, those are the opposite of purposive AI. They are just tools that are built with no purpose. There is no purpose for generative AI, for example. It's a tool that's just floating around looking for a purpose. And I will conclude with recommendations. If you are using generative system, I urge you to check and double check, make sure its accuracy. If you are an AI developer, I ask you to pay a lot of attention to so many of the problems I mentioned. And if you are, a philanthropic funder, before you push AI into your funding recipients, I urge you to have a very nuanced understanding of the failures, the problems, and the limitations of AI, what it can and can't do. And for regulators, I one of the things that needs to be done is there has to be a statement of declaration of conflict or conflicts of interest, because so much of regulation is currently being captured by big tech corporations. And also resources for, data workers such as us, which is kind of the non-glamorous dirty work. Resources will be helpful. I'm sorry I have run over time, but thank you very much.